Everyone. This is update for May 25, 2022, day 91 of the war, end of the date update. So as always, we're going to start with general and economic news, and then we're going to do frontline walkthrough. So let's again focus on Russia. Even the Russian trolls were super unhappy with yesterday's video, but we'll need to keep discussing it because it's important for this war. So first of all, it looks like a Russian government increased the age limit for the contract service in the military to 50 years old. Just a reminder for those who did not follow our videos, about 3 weeks ago we put out a video where we discussed how the age was increased from 30 years to 40. So before the war started, and first two months of the war, the age limit was 30. So if you are below 30, you can go and sign up a contract with the Russian army and go and fight basically. Then about 3 weeks ago, they increased that age to 40, and now they increased it to 50. So that's obviously clearly pointing to the problem with the manpower in the army. So that's one data point. Another data point is it looks like a Russian army is supplying T-62 to the Russian units on the front line as well, which are old tanks. It's kind of like a hybrid version between kind of like a current tanks, which is T-64, T-72. They're more or less similar T-80. And then T-55. So that's kind of like a crossover between their sort of two different generations, which is obviously much worse tank. It looks like it's going to be used as a assault gun. So we'll see what's gonna happen there. But that's just an interesting piece of information. Now let's actually switch to the economic front in Russia. So Russian central bank stopped checking loan-making institutions, basically commercial banks in Russia. What this really means is that the central bank is not strict anymore with commercial banks in terms of their compliance. And the reason for that is because the loan portfolio of the commercial banks is deteriorating because the economic conditions are deteriorating, right? So they kind of play the game. We pretend that nothing is happening, basically, right? They just allow those portfolio to deteriorate, and there is no problem. So we just pretend and everything is okay there. Now we're actually gonna do small economic experiment today. This is just for fun. So on the left, you see cost of DJI Mavic 3 in the US on Amazon. It's depending on the version. It's 2,000 or 2,300, 2,400. Then you see the same plus minus DJI Mavic 3 in Russia, and let's say it's 340,000 Russian rubles. So if you try, we can use this actually because it's a free market, right? It's a Chinese product, so it's both supplied to Russia and the US. China does not support sanctions on Russia, and DJI actually has a contract with the Russian military. They continue providing all of the information and everything. So there's like a super extra excellent relationship. There's no problem of getting DJIs into Russia, right? And the same goes true for the US. There is no problem getting DJIs into the US. For sure there are some logistical problems, but they probably somewhat sort of more or less similar. So if you divide the cost of DJI in Russia versus the US, what you get is exchange rate. And the exchange rate here is 140 Russian rubles per $1 US. And that's actually, so you can see this is a real market driven exchange rate, as opposed to what the Russian sort of central bank pays, which is The last was like about $60. They can paint it easily as 1-to-1. There's no problem with that either. So this is kind of like tells you how the sort of how divorced from reality that exchange rate is. So this is probably not a perfect sort of, you cannot generalize, but this is more or less gives you a feel or taste of how incorrect, how basically it's dictated exchange rate by central bank, and so it doesn't reflect any kind of reality. So now actually let's discuss a little bit Ukraine, since we discussed so much Russia, and I'm sure that Russian trolls are gonna get really, really unhappy this time. But let's actually look at the Ukrainian problems, because it has also a lot of problems, as many as Russia does. So it got with very simple saying in Ukraine. So now it's the simple like table salt is becoming rare commodity and hard to buy, and so it went in price by 10 times. So it used to cost like 25 cents per kilogram. So now it costs about $2.5 per kilogram, which is obviously, like, as you can imagine, 10 times more. The reason being is that the producer of the table salt in Ukraine is actually very close. There is a town, Soledar. We'll get there when we look at the Sievierodonetsk salient. So basically they stop producing it because they have salt mine there. So Ukraine is out of salt, and so there is no salt, and they need to import salt. Eventually the price will go down as Ukraine start importing salt, but for now there are shortages and the price is extremely high generally. In addition, Russian military hit Ukrainian manufacturing facility in Zaporizhia, and that manufacturing facility was producing helicopter engines and also airplane engines. So the extent of the damage we don't know, whether it's able to continue or not. So this is just another data point to understand how slowly but surely Ukrainian economic potential is basically being totally destroyed. So that's one thing. Then Russia hit with rockets a couple more electrical substations. It actually was yesterday, and I forgot to mention that in Dnipro region basically, and also in Kharkiv region, west of Kharkiv, here, and then here east of Dnipro. So it's slowly but surely destroying the railroad infrastructure, and it's gonna get more and more challenging to bring supplies to the front line. But however, it's still possible, and as we can see there, Ukrainian army and just general Ukrainian population is using trucks extensively. So eventually it will get to the point that Russia will start hitting the bridges across Dnipro River, which we mentioned before. So far they sparing that, but they actually hit only one bridge in Zaporizhia a while ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and severely damaged it in Zaporizhia region. So this was just probably more like a warning or something. So that's another news. One more last like generic news is yesterday I was discussing Switchblade and mentioned that it was not impressive, the first application. So the reason for that is actually it was Switchblade 300, which is intended against the light armored targets, basically mostly infantry. And it was used against tank T-72. So obviously it wasn't effective against it. So today, 57th Brigade actually used Switchblade 600, and it was quite effective. They used 2, and they destroyed 2 tanks with it. So it does work. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to compare Russian-made kamikaze drone with Switchblade, because Russia has like sort of like a one model, and it's probably more aimed against light skin, like basically more infantry, against infantry, as opposed to they don't have equivalent for Switchblade 600. They have more equivalent for Switchblade 300. So that's all for the sort of general economic and just all kind of news. Now let's actually switch to the walk through the front line. We're gonna do it in a clockwise fashion, starting from the very north. So again, ping pong is artillery. Ping pong is not stopping. The same thing is going on across the border. So the both, as we discussed before, this is Russia keeps this opportunity open to declare war on Ukraine formally if they need to do so. Now let's continue. Now let's go a little bit more south. We're going to look at what's going on near Kharkiv. Here, situation, it's not really kind of stable. Both sides are still fighting. So we heard of Ukrainian sort of counterattacks or attempts to recapture Ternova, which did not result in anything, probably some losses. But this fighting here is really small size, like a company squad type of size units. It's totally nothing really major here. Now let's go south. Let's look at what's going on at Izyum bridgehead and Lyman bridgehead. So this is schematic of what's going on there, and actually we want to show you what we actually realized was happening, and that actually kind of explains what's happening near Popasna and Sievierodonetsk salient. Is basically this sort of call it tired or exhausted units on the Russian side that we see here. Russian side, basically was transferring them to Sievierodonetsk and Popasna area and been using them there. We'll look once we get there. We have confirmation for only 76 Airborne Division, but we're pretty sure the same is going on. It's probably 106 Airborne Division is there, probably units from 144th Division, because we have not seen these units specifically on the bridgehead for a while. So it really kind of tells us that what the Russian side decided to do is actually create a stronger hammer there by transferring, because they didn't see opportunity to kind of push through here. They decided and they saw initial successes there, so they decided to kind of put the pressure where there are successes. And for the same reason, then probably in a reactive fashion, Ukrainian army transferred 14th Brigade over there. So you'll see, we'll discuss once we get there. But this is basically the whole big picture of what's going on. Let's actually have a closer look at the whole situation. So on Izyum bridgehead, Russian troops tried to attack from Dovhinke, did not have successes. Then they tried to attack from Pasika, which they captured about 2 or 3 days ago, when they kind of pushed through here. So again, also no successes here. So for now, situation here is stable. Also, situation here and this piece of Lyman bridgehead, which we call Svyatohirsk bridgehead now, it's also as well stable. Here, Russian troops had initial success. They pushed Ukrainian troops pretty strongly almost out of Lyman, and let's actually have a look what's going on. So at this point, Ukrainian troops really essentially control this railroad line here in sort of like a central and southern portion of the town. So Russian side is fully controlling like northern and northeastern section, and then eastern section here in this area. And then Ukrainian side is controlling basically like a train station and the kind of like a logistical sort of call it hub of the town. So basically area kind of like near the train station here. So this is a sort of like a last ditch effort by Ukrainian army to hold to Lyman. So far today they were successful in holding on. We don't know if they will be able to continue doing so. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. In any case, loss of this bridgehead is not going to be critical for this one, for Ukrainian army. It's not going to lead to anything sort of disastrous. Obviously, it's not great news for sure. This is definitely loss and defeat of Ukrainian army here. Let's now continue and let's go and look what's going on here on this Sievierodonetsk salient, where the situation is the worst for Ukrainian army and the most dangerous overall. So here's what's going on, what was going on. And some of you may have noticed, I put a note this morning saying that Russian troops captured a couple villages here. So basically they captured village Bilogorivka, Vasylivka, and got the name. There's another village there, Nagirne. Yeah. So there is a village Nagirne, which is like literally next to Bilogorivka here. We don't see it, but basically they captured these 3 villages here, and then what happened is then Ukrainian troops managed to push very, very little, just literally outside of the villages, Russian troops. Basically, the Russian units here are literally like 500 meters or not more than 1 kilometer away from this road. So this road is unusable, like totally, because they literally shooting at it. So there is nothing, you cannot use this road at this point. So the only road that sort of supplies this whole group here is this, as you can see, kind of like goes here. This is the main logistical artery here at this point for this Severodonetsk salient, for the troops in Severodonetsk salient, basically. How we realize what Russian army is doing is actually we found out that airborne unit that we were discussing before, that we didn't know what it is. It's actually basically before we call it a consolidated unit, or let's call it maybe battle group of the 76th Airborne Division. That's who was fighting there. And if you remember, this is a unit from Kyiv West Group that suffered actually pretty heavily during the attack on Kyiv from the west. Apparently, it's not fully repaired. It's a battle group, which means it's consolidated from their sort of whatever is left over, and they basically, it's probably like, usually it would be like 8,000 to 9,000 people. Probably has like around 5,000 people, right? So it's still pretty strong unit, and the sort of not advantage, but the strength of it has high fighting spirit, right? So that's not it's not a unit from the 2nd Army Corps, right? Like this DNR troops. It's probably one of the better troops after Wagner mercenaries. That's probably on the top based on their spirit. They actually somewhat lack heavy weapons, but then apparently Russian troops brought in quite a bit of artillery here as a standalone unit. So probably artillery brigades similar to what Ukrainian army has. But in any case, so they managed to capture this village Vasylivka, and it's now in Russian hands. They lost control over Bilogorivka and Nagirne, but they basically literally on the outskirts of these villages. So we're pretty sure tomorrow they will renew, push and try to continue pushing. So what this really tells us is actually, because we were wondering where the Russian side is getting more units. So they're actually not getting more units, not getting more troops. They basically reusing those troops from the Izyum bridgehead. They quickly bringing them behind their lines, and they bringing them and throwing them where they have initial success. So basically they saw that Wagner mercenaries and 40th Naval Infantry Brigade and 57th Mechanized Brigade had success there. So they throw in, their whatever they have, and they just basically take the troops from the other section of the front where they don't have much success. So this is actually shows actually a step forward in flexibility, and this is definitely improvement in the Russian command. It's very clear for us. And so basically Ukrainian side is right now as stretched as possible, really on the edge. Even they managed to sort of keep control of this road. It doesn't really matter, this road is not usable anyways. So the purpose of the Russian troops is obviously to kind of like continue attacking north, to cut off this whole group of Ukrainian troops. And whether they will be able or not is questionable. We don't know. But the problem is not so much that there is like overwhelming number of Russian troops, which we think is actually right now numerically it's about 1-to-1. We don't think that Russian troops right now exceeding Ukrainian troops. Where they exceed is in heavy weapons. Right, and that's what they taking advantage of: artillery, mortar, rockets. That's what they shelling very intensively, and that's how they kind of like build the sort of the pass for themselves so far in this situation. And the problem on Ukrainian side that this leads to high losses of the skilled and experienced soldiers, and the new sort of replacements that are coming are pretty green, in many cases pretty poorly trained and not really capable to replace older soldiers. So that the unit's becoming weaker, right? So this 14th brigade was very like heavily obliterated. 24 is the same. 80th a little bit less so, but still pretty bad. And 115th was pretty heavily obliterated. So as a result, because the quality of the people really what's the most important, and if it goes down overall, not because they're stupid or whatever, they're just not trained, or trained very little, or they didn't have the experience. So as a result, the whole quality of the unit goes down as well, and its ability to continue defensive action also goes down. So that's kind of how it works, and that's probably explanation of why the Popasna was lost and how this whole situation came about, and why it's still in very, very difficult situation and really on the edge. And if things can easily go to very catastrophic situation for Ukrainian army in this area. So so we discussed this. Then there was also small success on the Russian side. Well, actually, of their Second Army Corps, 4th Brigade, they finally managed to capture this village Toshkivka that been fighting probably for 20 days. So they just pushed a little bit more Ukrainian troops here. So this is really not critical situation here. This is really where the sort of fate of this whole kind of fight will be decided. And actually, I forgot to say, based on this kind of new information that we sort of discovered, realized in terms of this is basically recycled troops from the other section of the front line. What this really means, this is kind of like a last hurrah for Russian troops. If they don't manage to, achieve their objective here, this whole front line probably will turn into more or less sort of strategic defense for both sides, because both sides will be extremely exhausted, even though Ukrainian side probably can replenish with the sort of fresh troops. But as we said, they definitely less trained, less prepared. But the more important is that Ukrainian army is severely lacking heavy weapons, heavy equipment, and it will not get anything probably till we would say mid-July. So this really means that both sides, it might be if Russian troops not gonna succeed here, it may lead to basically sort of a stalemate across the entire the whole front line, right? So what we're seeing right now on Kherson bridgehead, this probably could be happening here as well. But we'll see. Let's see if Ukrainian troops manage to hold the line here. So let's actually go. This is actually probably sort of more precise picture because more zoomed in, basically. No, and by the way, this is this town Solidar, where there is a salt mine that was producing salt for entire Ukraine. Now it was stopped, so that's why Ukraine has shortages of the salt. So now let's see what happens. So first, Russian side attacked, captured Vasylivka, this village, right? You see. Then from Vasylivka they attacked towards the road. They captured Bilogorivka in Nagirne. And then Ukrainian troops literally, so basically Russian troops were controlling the road, like totally were on the road, basically, right? And tried to dig in. So Ukrainian troops, whatever, they managed to do sort of like last ditch attack, and they literally pushed them like 500 meters or like 800 meters off the road, right? So technically Ukrainian side is controlling this Bilogorivka, and Nagirne is kind of like 50% controlled. So even though Russian troops don't control this road, but it's not usable, so you cannot really drive through that road. And honestly, this is at this point, this road was not usable anyways. At this point, it's just a question how more further north the Russian troops can get. This is really, the whole fighting is about that, nothing more. Otherwise, it was, Russian troops did some attacks here, but they were sort of more like a distraction attacks there. Also, they did not attack here. We don't have good information on the front line in this area. We do know that Russian troops tried to attack Pilipchatine, did not have much success there. So this is again the same kind of picture that we've seen here. Let's actually look at situation a little bit more towards south, where we talk about this Svitlodarsk salient that was very intelligently destroyed by the Russians, specifically by the Wagner mercenaries that attacked in the flank and in the rear, created threat of encirclement, and basically forced Ukrainian troops to withdraw. So at this point, it's very unclear where the front line lies here. So we hear different sort of very contradicting information. So for that reason, from very different sources, it's very hard to establish where the front line right now here for Ukrainian troops. What we do know that this area, like kind of like north of the lake, is still controlled by Ukrainian troops, but it's unclear what's going on specifically much more in this area. There is very high chance that Russian side managed to capture this whole area, but we don't have good confirmation for this. So in that case, it would be kind of like another huge wedge, which again creates even more problems in building successful defensive lines here. And then, again, clever sort of thinking on the Russian side. Then they attacked from this side, trying to push, understanding that Ukrainian troops are busy with kind of dealing with this breakthrough. Then they attacked from here. So far they were not successful, but nevertheless they did the right thing, basically tried to attack and to capture a town here. I think it's called Novoluhansk, but they did not manage to do that. We'll see if what tomorrow brings, because situation here is very fluid basically in this area. So this is the whole, we see more or less situation around Popasna, and now we're gonna call also Bahmut. This is this town. So as you can see, it's very, very dangerous, really on the edge, and can turn catastrophic for Ukrainian army very easily if things go wrong way. Now let's continue. Let's look at what's going on west of Donetsk here. So Russian side was actually attacking today here near village of Pisky. Again, also always Marinka, always Novomykhailivka. So just typical places, no successes, no progress. We believe that all of the sort of now having that understanding of what's happening with Popasna and Izyum and the sort of transfer of the troops. So we think that most of the troops right now are brought to the Popasna area to exploit that situation there. So this is just a closer look at the situation straight west of Donetsk, and this is this village Pisky. This is Donetsk airport, international airport, totally destroyed at this point. So this is where Russian side tried to attack. Apparently, probably with the idea, kind of like also kind of create another so salient, and effectively, eventually, kind of attempt to create encirclement and force Ukrainian troops out of Avdiivka, which, as we mentioned before, this is one of the biggest producer of coking coal or metallurgical coal, whatever the right. Well, I think those terms are both sort of valid terms, and just different countries use different terms. But basically, this is basically ingredient for making steel. That's the importance of it is. And in Ukraine, steel industry is one of the big drivers of the industry overall in Ukraine. So this is important location, and loss of it is going to be another blow to Ukrainian industry overall, and just in general economic potential of Ukraine. So let's now look at the Zaporizhzhia front line, as we're just going to have very quick look, because situation stable. This is the wedge that Russian troops built, trying to create a southern pincer, trying in attempt to encircle Ukrainian troops in Donbas salient. It's stable, nothing new here. Again, this whole front line is stable. Essentially, both sides are kind of like on strategic defensive on strategic defense here. Let's now move to Kherson area, where the situation is exactly the same. Russian troops are digging in very actively. Ukrainian troops don't have enough to firepower and everything to attack, so the situation is a stalemate here, basically. Okay, that's it for today, and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.